لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم. تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا عليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا عليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب عليم. قالوا طائركم معكم وإن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم محتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وعليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني ذل في ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا زينة وعددا وإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم عليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآيات لهم الأرض الميتة أحيينا وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم مما لا يعلمون. وآيات لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآيات لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا نطعم من لو يشاء الله وطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور وإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون السلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أهد عليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تأكلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق فلا يأكلون وما علمناه الشعر ما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللنا لهم فمنها ركوبا ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرا وهم لهم جند مهدرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. بسم الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم بحق محمد أنت المحمود، اللهم بحق علي أنت الأعلى، اللهم بحق الحسن أنت المحسن، اللهم بحق الحسين أنت قديم الإحسان. يا قاضي الحاجات اقض حاجات المؤمنين والمؤمنات، يا شافي الأمراض اشف مرضى المؤمنين والمؤمنات، يا رازق زيادة في الرزق، بركة في الرزق، سعة في الجسم، توبة قبل الموت، مغفرة بعد الموت، نجاة من النار، دخول في الجنة، عافية في الدنيا والآخرة، إنك على كل شيء قدير. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. اللهم ارفع درجات سيد غلام حسين، اللهم ارفع درجات سيد شبير حسين، اللهم ارفع درجات محمد علي وسيد علي شاه بحق محمد وعلي من اغفر لنا وارحمنا، أنت مولانا ارحمنا إنك أنت كريم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك الإثم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النكم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك واستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من كربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال هذا متذلل خاشع متضرع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني باسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لكبائه ساترا ولا لشيء من أمري الكبير بالحسن مبدل غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من كبير سترت وكم من فادهم من البلاء أقلت وكم من إسار وكيد وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من صناع جميل لست أهلا له نشرت اللهم أعظم بلائي وفرط بسوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقادت بي أغلالي وحبسني النفعي بعد أعمالي وخدتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومثالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يجو عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعلي ولا تفزعني بخفي ما اطلعت علي من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وسعتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهوتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأهوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور أتوفا إلهي ومولاي وربي من لي غيرك سلو كشف الضر والنظر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيها ونفسي ولم احترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما هو وسدوا على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعد أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك والزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مكرا مذنيا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا ملجأ أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في ساعة رحمتك اللهم واقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وساكي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وصالح برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي يتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد ما انطوى علي قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضع لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من آويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي تسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا ولا ألسنا نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة وعلى ضمائر هوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارها سات إلى أوطان تعبدك طايا وأشارت باستغفارك مذنيا ما هكذا بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكسو يسير بكاء كثير مدته فكيف احتمالي ولا بلاء إلى آخر وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تكمل السماوات والأرض يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستقيم يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور عليك أشكو ولما من هذه وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته وعمل طول البلاء ومدته فلئن سيرتني في العقوبات ما أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي أفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي يا مولاي أقسم صادقا لن تركتني ناتكا لزجن عليك بين أهلها زجيج العاملين ولا أصرخن عليك صراخ المستصرخين ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولو نادينك إن كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية أعمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاك طعمها بعذابها بمعصيتك وهو بسبين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يزج عليك زجيج معمل رحمتك ويناديك باللسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل عليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من علمك ورأفتك ورحمتك أم كيف تولمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يهرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع فيها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانا أم كيف يشترمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتكلكل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تجر زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك في إتكه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات مع ذلك ظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عملت بالمواحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين يقتل لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاهديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجلت نارا كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مكر ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد في المعاندين وأن تجل سنا وقلت مبتدعا وتطولت بالإنام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي هتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمت وكل ذنب أذنبت وكل جرم أجرمت وكل ذنب أذنبت وكل جرم أجرمت وكل ذنب أذنبت وكل قبيح أسررت وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباته والكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتم شهودا علي مع جواره وكنت أنت رقيب علي من ورائهم وشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رزقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك مأمورا وبخدمتك موصولة وآمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وعلي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من عليه شكوت أهوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جواري واجدد العزيمة جواني وابلي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى يسرع عليك في ميادين السابقين واسرع عليك في المبادرين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارده ومن كادني فكده واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك واقربا منزلة منك وخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجدلي بجودك واتف علي من مجدك وحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وكلني أسرتي واغفر لي زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم الإجابة فعليك يا رب نصرت وجهي وعليك يا رب مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقط من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من راسم عليه الرجاء وصلاه البكاء يا سابق النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستبشرين في الظلم يا لمن لا يؤلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهل ولا تفعل بما نحن أهل وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد परवरदिगार जो भी हमने पढ़ा इसका सवाब शाह साहब की और इनकी बेगम के जो मरहूमी ने उनको पहुँचा और मेरे परवरदिगार सैयद गुलाम हुसैन शाह साहब सैयद शबीर हुसैन सैयद मोहम्मद अली शाह सैयद सैद अली शाह और जो मरहूमी हैं हमारे ख़ानदान के उनका भी इसका सवाल पहुँचे परवरदिगार तमाम मोमिनीन मोमिनात के दर्जात मरहूमीन के इरफा फरमा हमारे गुनाहों से दरगुजर फरमा ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم آمين آمين يا رب العالمين. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين يا رب العالمين. صل على
मेरा पैगाम मिला था? नहीं मिला था। पास हो गया था? माशाल्लाह। हाँ माशाल्लाह। मैं असल में ज़ियारत पे गया था तो नहीं
बता रहे थे कि वो वालदा को लेके गया।
नहीं नहीं बस इराक। हाँ बस इराक गया था। हाँ इंशाल्लाह
Syed bhai, nice to see you.
आप उद्योगों से बात करती है?
हाँ इधर है। कोई नहीं तो नजदीक बड़ा बैठने की पढ़ने के।
शुक्र।
बेगम से बात करती है? वो क्या है कि आपको
औज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहिल्लज़ी ला यब्लुगु मिदहतुहुल क़ाइलून वला युसीना माहुल अद्दून वला युअद्दी हक़्क़हुल मुज्तहिदून अल्लज़ी ला युद्रिकुहु बहदुल हिमम वला युनालुहु गौसुल फितन अल्लज़ी लैस लिसिफ़तिही हद्दुन महदूदुन वला नातुन मौजूदुन वला वक़्तुन महदूदुन वला अजलुन ममदूद फ़तरल ख़लाइक़ बिक़ुदरतिही व नशर रियाह बिरहमतिही ववत्तद बिस्सुख़ुर मैदान अर्द थुम्मा अस्सलातु वस्सलामु अला अशरफिल अन्बिया'i वल मुरसलीन वहबीबना वहबीब रब्बिल आलमीन अबिल क़ासिम मुहम्मद अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मदिन व आलि मुहम्मद व अला अहलि बैतिहि अत्तय्यिबीन अत्ताहिरीन वल्लअन अला अदाइहिम अजमईन मिन अव्वलि यौमि ज़ुल्मिहिम इला क़ियामि यौमिद्दीन अम्मा बाद फ़क़ाल अल्लाहु सुब्हानहु व तआला फ़ी किताबिहिल मुबीन व क़ौलुहुल हक़ बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम शहरु रमज़ानल्लज़ी उन्ज़िल फ़ीहिल क़ुरआनु हुदल लिन्नासि व बय्यिनातिम मिनल हुदा वल फ़ुरक़ान सदक़ल्लाहुल अलियुल अज़ीम. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Known to almost 7 billion people in the world and recited by over 1 billion Muslims in the world, the Quran is just not an ordinary book. The verse that I started this lecture off with, yes, it's a very famous verse, and this verse is read as a dua in the month of Ramadan, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is a verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 185, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the month of Ramadan is that in which the Quran was revealed. This Quran is a guidance for mankind. It has clear proofs of guidance, and it's known as the Furqan. Wal Furqan. Well, min al huda wal Furqan. So it's also Furqan, and Furqan, the criterion. And this is what my topic is. My topic isn't about Ramadan. Inshallah, when the month of Ramadan comes, we'll look at different topics in that month if I get the opportunity. But tonight, my topic is the Quran itself. When it comes to the Quran, not just Muslims, but non-Muslims, they have questions about it. What is the Quran? What is this book about? What are the contents of the Quran? How is this Quran a miracle? We Muslims, we claim that this Quran is a miracle, so how is this Quran a miracle? Why do millions of believers still adhere to this book which was revealed 1400 years ago? And why do they use this book? Why did they use the Quran to guide them to salvation in their lives 1400 years after it was revealed? And what's the difference between this book? What's the difference between the Quran and all of the other books that have been written by so many different authors? And what is so unique about the Quran? And there are so many different questions that are always asked. And this is exactly what I want to answer. These questions that a lot of Muslims and a lot of non-Muslims, especially because we live in the West, these type of questions, they come from a lot of our non-Muslim friends. So if we don't have an answer, if we don't know what is so special about the Quran, if we don't know why we read the Quran, if we don't know what the Quran contains, what type of content the Quran has, then we're left speechless in front of our friends, our colleagues, and all of the other people that ask us about this book. So to begin with, there are two subjects that are very difficult to talk about, and both of those subjects are what the Holy Prophet had left behind in Ghadir Qum. When the Holy Prophet, he says that I leave behind you two weighty things, two precious things, Hadith al-Saqalain. And where he says that I'm leaving behind among you two precious things, and as long as you adhere to both of them, you'll never go astray. When it comes to the Muslims in general, when you look at the Shias and the Sunnis, what's happened now is this hadith is accepted by Shias and Sunnis. Hadith al-Saqalain accepted by Shias and Sunnis. Yes, the Sunnis, they have other variations of the hadith where the Holy Prophet doesn't say, I leave behind you the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. They have other variations where they say that the Holy Prophet didn't say that. He said, I leave behind you the Quran and the Sunnah. That's a different matter. But they also have hadith that say that I leave behind you the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt. So when the Shias also have this, the Sunnis also have this means that this narration is thiq, or this narration is correct. But what's happened now? When the Holy Prophet said that if you adhere to both of them, you'll never go astray. The condition is that you adhere to both of them. The Sunnis, what did they do? They took the Quran, they adhered to the Quran. You look at them read in the month of Ramadan, they'll finish it 30 times. The Shias, what did they do? They adhere to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Not that they don't read the Quran, no, they do read the Quran. But when it comes to the Sunnis, the prevalence is given to the Quran. When it comes to the Shias, it's given to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. The Holy Prophet, inshallah, if I ever get a chance, I want to analyze this hadith in depth, but the Holy Prophet, he says you have to adhere to both of them. One is not above the other. When you analyze it, you see that one is not above the other. One explains the other. So what does that mean? That means that they're at equal level. And inshallah, if we ever get a chance, we'll analyze this hadith in depth. But I don't have the opportunity now because I need to talk about the Quran itself. But no matter how much we talk about both of these subjects, no matter how much we talk about the Quran or how much we talk about the Ahlul Bayt, we will never be able to do justice to them. Why? Because about the Quran itself, Syed Khouy, Ayatollah Khouy, what does he say about the Quran? He says, what can a person say in describing the eminence of the Quran and its glory? What can he say to explain its excellence and the sublimity of the Quran? How can a contingent, how can a mumkin al-wujud perceive the greatness of the speech of wajib al-wujud? How can us human beings that are contingent, that are mumkin al-wujud, how can we talk about the speech that was given by who? The absolute being, wajib al-wujud. What can an author write about this subject and what can a speaker say? Can a limited being describe anything that is unlimited? You and I, we're limited. The speech of the Quran is from whom? Is from that being that is unlimited, that being that is infinite. So Sayyid Hui, what does he say? He says, how can we who are limited, how can we explain something that is unlimited? For something that is unlimited to be explained, this being himself has to be unlimited. This is why the Holy Prophet says what? Ahlul Bayt and the Quran. And Sayyid Hui says this is the reason that it's better to hand over the explanation of the excellence of the Quran to those comparable to the Quran. And who are they? The Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They are the people that are the most knowledgeable about its status and the best able to point out its lofty prestige, and they are its peers in excellence and its associates in guidance. Just the same way that the Quran guides mankind, that's the same way that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam guide mankind. And about the Quran itself, what does Amir al-Mu'mineen say? Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he says that it's a light whose radiance shall not be extinguished, a lamp whose flame shall not die, an ocean whose depth shall not be fathomed. It is the fountainhead of knowledge and its vastness, an ocean that shall not be drained by those who draw upon it, a guidance for whoever follows it. And the Quran says the same thing. The Quran, it says the same thing. All of these sayings of Amir al-Mu'mineen could be explained in detail, but let's just take one. When Amir al-Mu'mineen says that the Quran is a lamp whose flame shall not die, what does that mean? That it means that the Quran is a book whose content will never be extinguished. It will remain fresh and new until the day of resurrection. What does that mean? So many times in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to ponder, to think critically about His signs, about all of His ayat. The Quran is one of the ayats of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you read the Quran says to think, not just to think deeply about what you're reading. And the problem today is, what do we do? Even in the month of Ramadan, what do Muslims do? They just read it as fast as they can, just to try to finish it. That's it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, this is not what I want. I want you to read what I've said, and I want you to think upon it. When you read the Quran the way it's supposed to be read, and you think about what you're reading, every time you read, you can read one verse over and over and over again, but every time you read, what happens? And you think about it, new points come to your mind. Every time you read, new points come to your mind. Can you say the same thing about other books that have been written? No. This is one of those miracles of the Quran. Inshallah, we'll get to that. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on to say that a verse may have been sent down regarding a specific occasion or community, yet its relevance is not limited to that person, its relevance is not limited to that community, its relevance is not limited to that era in which this verse was revealed. Rather what? Rather, until the day of resurrection, if there's a person for whom this verse of the Quran will be applied to, you can apply it to that person. If there's a community that a verse of the Quran can be applied to, you can apply it to that community. If there's an age in which a verse of the Quran can be applied to, you will apply it to that age. What do I mean? Fir'aun, Lanatullah alayhi, he lived how long? He lived in the time of Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam. All of the verses of the Quran that talk about Fir'aun, do they only apply to that Fir'aun? That's it? Or no, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling you that this Fir'aun, he had a certain sifa, he had a certain characteristic, and anyone that has his characteristics throughout the end of time, this verse will be applied to him? That's what the Quran is telling us. That's what the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, that's what Amir al-Mu'mineen is telling us when he says, look, a verse could have been revealed for a specific person. But just because that person dies does not mean that the verse of the Quran dies with that person. That person might die, but no, that verse is still alive. Why? Because there will be other people that that verse will be applied to, whether the verse is good or whether the verse is bad. There will be people until the day of resurrection, until that verse, that verse will be applied to people until the day of resurrection. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? And those who disbelieve say, why has not a sign been set down upon him from his Lord? You're only a warner, and there is a guide for every people. وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ حَادٍ. In relation to this last part of the verse of the Quran, or this last verse of this part of this verse, a companion of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he was with the Imam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. And they were speaking to each other when the companion, he says to the Imam that in this verse, Ali alayhi salam is that guide. وَكُلِّ قَوْمٍ حَادٍ, that guide, the hadi, that this verse is talking about. The companion, he says to our sixth Imam, Mawla, this verse is talking about Amir al-Mu'mineen. And the Imam, he says, you're right. This verse is talking about Amir al-Mu'mineen. But now that Amir al-Mu'mineen is not in this world physically, does this mean that there's no guide anymore? Does this mean that there's no guide anymore? And he goes, no, there has to be. You're that guide in this time, in this age, you are that guide. So the Imam himself, he says, yes, you're absolutely correct. This verse does not die with the personality. No, it stays alive until the end of time. So that means what? If every community has a guide, then that means that this community today also has a guide. So who is that guide? We as Shias, we can say Imam Zaman. But this Quran was not only revealed for Shias, no, it was revealed for all Muslims. It was revealed for mankind, that's absolutely true. But it's a guidance for believers. Remember, it was revealed for all mankind, but it's a guidance for believers. So, for the majority of Muslims, who is that guide that this verse is talking about? If you don't have a guide, then that means that this verse does not apply. If you don't have a guide, then that means that this verse does not apply anymore. That's it. You either claim that is, like someone said, Rasulullah, but you claim that he passed away 1400 years ago. How is he guiding you now? Or no, you claim that there's a successor to Rasulullah who's alive now, who's guiding. So we as Shias, we say that that is the Imam of the time. And Imam Jafar Sadiq, he says to Kamsan, you're absolutely right. He goes, I am the guide today. In this time and age, I am that guide. And he goes on to say that these verses, they do not cease to exist with whomever they were revealed for. No, they continue to exist and they will continue to be applied to those that are alive as long as judgment, as long as judgment day comes. And the Quran itself, it introduces itself by saying what? What I started this verse off with, the month of the month of Ramadan is that in which the Quran was revealed, a guidance for mankind. Like I said before, it's a guidance for mankind. And clear proofs of guidance, and it's the criterion. Burhan, criterion. And then it goes on to say what? Ya ayyuhan nas qad ja'akum burhanun. Inshallah, maybe some other time we'll go into the tafsir of this verse. Ya ayyuhan nas qad ja'akum burhanun. O people, surely there has come to you burhan. There has come to you a criterion. Please pay attention to the words. Ya ayyuhan nas qad ja'akum burhanun. Criterion has come to you. Min rabbikum, from your Lord. Wa anzalna ilaykum nuran mubin. This verse says that the burhan has come to you from the Lord, and it goes on to say what? Wa anzalna ilaykum nurun mubin. Nurun mubin has been descended upon you. The burhan was given, nurun mubin was descended. Is burhan and nurun mubin the same thing in this verse? The burhan, it's Quran. What is this nurun mubin? If you say nurun mubin is not the Quran, it's something else, then this verse of the Quran is saying that this nurun mubin, one and foremost, this mubin is nur. This mubin is nur, and this nur was descended. It wasn't given. The burhan was given, it was sent, but this nurun mubin was descended. So what is this nurun mubin? Inshallah, if we ever get a chance, we'll talk about what this nurun mubin is. I don't have time to go into the tafsir of all the verses of the Quran, but inshallah, when we do have time, we will look at the tafsir of these verses, because there's some tafsir of the Quran, like tafsir al-Burhan or tafsir Nur al-Saqalain. They don't just look at the exoteric meaning of the Quran. No, they go into deep esoteric meaning of the Quran, where they'll have narrations that explain to us what Nurul Mubin is. But right now I don't have the time. But the Quran, according to itself, it's a guidance. It's evidence. It's a discriminator between right and wrong. And it's a manifest light for the people to guide them correctly and help them in all of their needs. Surah Al-Isra, verse number 9, it says that this Quran guides to that which is most upright. And it gives good news to the believers who do good deeds, that they have great rewards. And the Quran itself, it describes its other functions as the display of the prophetic mission, which is aimed at what? Guiding the community, guiding humanity, by delivering them from darkness and leading them towards the light. And this is what I want to go over. This darkness, what this is, because a lot of non-Muslims, they'll have a question. What does the Quran talk about? If you were to just summarize the Quran, about the content of the Quran, what would you say? If you were to summarize the content of the Quran, what would you say? It's a book that guides people from darkness to light. It's a book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's fine. It's a book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the Bible is also a book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Injil is also a book, the Torah is also a book, the Zabur is also a book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is also a book. But if you were to summarize the content of the Quran, what is it? It's a guidance. It's a book that guides people from darkness to nur, from zulumat to nur. And I want to look at what this zulumat is. Okay? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Alif Lam Ra, this is a book which we have revealed to you that you may bring forth men out of the depth of darkness into light. Minat zulumat ila nur, from darkness to nur, by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the meaning of darkness here? Because when you read the Quran, so many times this word darkness, zulumat, is used. What is the meaning of darkness? The darkness of ignorance is what is being talked about. The darkness of ignorance is one of the vices from which the Quran liberates humanity from it and leads towards the light of knowledge, which is that nur that this verse is talking about. Taking humanity from ignorance to nur. When you look at the society that the Quran was revealed in 1400 years ago, the Arab society, alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. In Hijaz, when it was revealed, what were the Arabs doing? You look at how ignorant they were. Even now, the time period before the Quran was revealed, what is it known as in Islam? Jahiliyyah. The time of Jahiliyyah, the time of ignorance. What were they doing? Why was it known as the time of ignorance? What were they doing at that time? You pick up a history book, infanticide, where they were killing daughters, they were burying them alive. Daughters, they were burying them alive. You'll pick up history book, what were they doing? They were drinking water from dirty puddles. You look at the sermon of Lady Zahra, she herself, she says the same thing. Before my father, what were you doing? You were drinking dirty water. Before my father, you were drinking dirty water. You look at the time of Jahiliyyah, what was going on? One tribe was fighting another tribe constantly. You look at the time of Jahiliyyah, what were they doing at that time? Before Islam, before the Quran, the Kaaba was already there. People from all around the world, they would come to the Kaaba. But what would they do? What were some of the traditions that they would do? Yes, they would go around the Kaaba too. But at that time, how would they go around the Kaaba? If you pick up a history book, they say that those people, they'd go around the Kaaba naked. They'd go around the Kaaba naked. This was the intellect of those people at that time. When the Quran came, when the Holy Prophet came, he took them out of that ignorance and he showed them the light. And this is what the Quran is talking about. But if merely ignorance were regarded as darkness, then the philosophers, isn't that what they do also? Philosophy, isn't that what it's supposed to do? Take you out of ignorance and bring you to light, to help you think. Philosophy, what does it mean? It means love of wisdom. Philosophy itself, it means love of wisdom. But there exists other evils more dangerous than ignorance itself. And to subdue those type of ignorances, or to subdue those, are beyond the sheer power of knowledge itself. You need something more than that. Among them is what? Worshipping materials. That's what they were doing in Mecca at that time. What were they worshipping? Wood. What were they worshipping? Rocks. The idols that were there in Kaaba, they were made out of rocks. Egoism. Me. This itself is a form of ignorance. This egoism. How do you get rid of that? Enslaving yourself to desires. How do you get rid of that? Greed. How do you get rid of that? Their personal and their moral vices. Social vices like oppression and discrimination manifest the spiritual darkness of society as a whole. In Arabic, the word zulma is derived from the same root zulm. Zulma is darkness. It's derived from the same root zulm. What is zulm? What's zulm? In Urdu, it's the same meaning. Injustice, oppression. That's what zulm is. Which shows that injustice is a form of what? Social, spiritual darkness. And to struggle against such forms of darkness is the responsibility of the Quran, is the responsibility of the messengers that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends. The job of the messengers is to change society as a whole. But society as a whole will not change until when? The individual starts to change. And this is what the Quran, this is what the Ahlul Bayt, this is what the prophets were sent to do, to change this individual. Addressing Prophet Musa alayhi salam, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in the Quran? وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مُوسَى بِآيَاتِنَا أَنْ أَخْرَجْ قَوْمَكَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and certainly we sent Musa with our command saying, bring out your people from utter darkness into light. And remind them of the days of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bring them out of utter darkness into light. What does this mean? What was this darkness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about? This darkness, the people of Musa, they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Did they not? The Jews, did they not believe in God? Yes, they did. They believed in Prophet Musa alayhi salam. So what was this darkness? This darkness here is talking about Fir'aun's oppression. Fir'aun's oppression. Like I said, what is one of the jobs of the prophets? To change society. This darkness that's being talked about, if you look at some of the tafsirs, especially Tafsir Namuna, they say that this darkness is not the darkness of ignorance in terms of spirituality. No. They believed in God. So they were clear from that darkness. They believed in Prophet. They were clear from that darkness. But what was the darkness that they were in? It was the darkness of the oppression of Fir'aun lanatullah alayh. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Prophet Musa alayhi salam to bring them out of that darkness. And the Mufassirin of the Quran, they emphasize the point that whenever the Quran mentions darkness, it's always used in the plural form. Zulumat. It's always used in the plural form. But whenever light is used, it's always used in the singular form. What does this mean? The Mufassirin say, they say, look, there's this light, this nur. It means that there's only one straight path. Zulumat is always plural. Why? Because there's so many digressions, so many wrong paths that you can take. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the prophets to get them out of all those dark paths and bring them to this one nur that He wants. That's why Zulumat is always used in plural. Nur is always used in singular. Why? Because there's only one nur. Only one true path. All of these other paths, they're darknesses. They may seem like they're the right path, but when you start to think about everything, you realize, no, this isn't the right path. This is why Tafsir Namuna also, Syed Tafsir Namuna, Sheikh Nasir Makam Shirazi, he says the same thing. This is what he says. There are so many different darknesses, but there's only one nur. That's why Zulumat is always plural, nur is always singular. So this means that the word darkness includes all sorts of darknesses, all types of evil ways that leads towards darkness. And that one light, that one nur signifies the single right path. Within Islam itself, we had 72, 73 different sects of Islam. Within the Shias and Sunni. Are the Shias and Sunnis, are they both on the right path? One of them is on the path of darkness. One of them is on the path of darkness. One of them is on the path of light. Like Amir al-Mu'mineen said, like Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam said, like Imam Raza alayhi salam said, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. These verses of the Quran, they get applied in every time. In the time of the Holy Prophet, we understood there was no Islam. That darkness was the darkness of Jahiliyyah. But after Islam, was there no darkness anymore? No. What had happened after Islam came? You had so many different digressions. All of them cannot be true. Even today, we have different digressions. All of them cannot be true. No, there's only one true path. There's only one light. It's our responsibility to find what that light is. But when it comes to Prophet Musa alayhi salam, another question that they have is, we Muslims, we claim that this is the Quran. The Quran is a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How is a book a miracle? Or it's a miracle of the Holy Prophet. How is this book a miracle? They'll say, what kind of miracle is this? You yourself in the Quran, or you as Muslims, you talk about the miracles that, for example, Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he had the staff. Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he had the hand, white hand. When he would show it, it would be completely white, it would be light. Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he split the sea. Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he did that. You look at Prophet Isa alayhi salam, they say, you Muslims, you say that Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he walked on water. You say the Quran itself, it says that Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he raised the dead. The Quran itself, it says that Prophet Isa alayhi salam, it gave life to a lifeless bird. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. You look at Islam, look at Prophet, alaykum salam, you look at Prophet Yahya, you look at Prophet Zakaria, you look at all these prophets, they have all these miracles. And then you claim that the miracle of the Holy Prophet is this Quran. What's so special about it? How is this a miracle? Think about it. After Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he split that sea. What happened? That miracle was only there for that time period. After he split it, Fir'aun tried to go in. What happened? The sea closed up. That miracle was gone. Yes? Yes. After Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam, he gave life to that bird. It flew away. As soon as that happened, the miracle was over with. As soon as Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam, he put his hands on the eyes of the blind person, the eyesight came back. As soon as his eyesight came back, that miracle was gone. When you look at these miracles of these prophets, as soon as they were done, they were gone. But you look at this Quran that was revealed 1400 years ago. Is it gone or does it still exist? Does it still exist the way it existed 1400 years ago or no? It exists the same way it existed 1400 years ago. We're not talking about the interpretation of the Quran, no. They're changing. The miracle of all those other prophets, it was for that time period. But this miracle of the last prophet, it's until the end of time. 1, 2. The miracle of the Quran itself, it challenges mankind. Some of the verses of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to mankind, bring 10 surahs like the Quran. Nothing. When they couldn't bring 10, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, okay, don't bring 10. Bring a few verses like the Quran. They couldn't bring a few verses. When they couldn't bring a few verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fine. Bring one verse like the Quran. Yet one verse wasn't brought like the Quran. One verse in the sense what? When the Arabs themselves, they read the Quran, even at that time, what was going on 1400 years ago? Poetry was what everyone prided themselves on. Poetry. Eloquence in poetry. Eloquence, when 5 words would do, you don't use 10 words. If you have a thought in eloquence, in Arabic eloquence, if you have a thought, the less words you use to describe that thought, it's considered the more, even in English, the less words you use, the more eloquent you are. So what was going on at that time? Everyone prided themselves on eloquence. People prided themselves on poetry. So when the Quran was revealed, the poets of that time, they themselves, they were stunned. The speakers of that time, they themselves, they were stunned. A lot of the English speakers, they don't understand why this is important. Why? Because English is it's a very narrow language, whereas Arabic is very open, it's very broad. So they don't understand this. Why this is important for the Quran. But what had happened when the Holy Prophet brought these verses? What would they say? They'd say that these are not the words of a man. The Arab speakers themselves, they would say that these are not the words, these cannot be the words of a man. And then they would say that Jannat are teaching them. But eloquence, in terms of eloquence, no one was able to produce even one verse like the Quran. In terms of content, no one was able to produce even one verse of the Quran. In content, how? Like I said in the beginning, the more you read and you ponder upon a verse, the more points that come out to you. From one verse. When you analyze it, the same way when we just analyze the word zulumat, the verse of the Quran, zulumat is always used in plural, nur is always used in singular. When you analyze it, so many points, every time you read the same verse, so many different points will come to you. But has the verse changed from when you read it first to now when you're reading it? No, the verse is the same. The words are exactly the same. But so many different points are coming to your mind. Does that happen with other books that are being read? No. Miracle of the Quran. 2. 3. The Quran itself, it foretold events that would happen. Proof that the Quran is word from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Miracle of the Quran. The Quran itself, it foretold the events that would happen. If those events were not to happen, you could easily say that this is not the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Holy Prophet, he claimed that this is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if he's telling you an event that will happen in the future, and that event doesn't happen, what are you going to start believing? You're going to start doubting his prophethood. You're going to start doubting what he's saying. So when the Quran itself, it foretells future events. For example, Abu Lahab, lanatullah alayh. Who was he? He was a relative of the Prophet. The Quran, it said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, he said in the Quran that Abu Lahab, what was going to happen to him? He would die a disbeliever and he would go to hell. This surah of the Quran, Surah Lahab, it's named after him. It was revealed 10 years before he died. It was revealed 10 years before he died. He had 10 whole years to prove the Holy Prophet wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that he would die a kafir. He wouldn't believe, he wouldn't accept Islam, and he would die a kafir. All he had to do to disprove the Holy Prophet's prophethood and disprove that this is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to say, La ilaha illallah. He had 10 years to do it. But he doesn't do it. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, that's exactly what happened. You look at other future events that the Quran had foretold about, the same thing. But this event itself, if it was not to come true, because I'm emphasizing this event, why? Because it happened in the lifetime of those people that lived there. Especially, it happened to whom? One of the staunchest enemies of the Holy Prophet. One of the staunchest enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All he had to do to disprove or discredit the Prophet's prophethood was to say, La ilaha illallah. 10 years. He had 10 years to do it. He doesn't do it. He doesn't do it. These are the types of miracles. When we say that the Quran itself is a miracle, this is why we're saying it. Why? Because there are events in the Quran that were told that came true. There was this event, there's no interpretation of this event. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this would happen and this is what happened. You can interpret verses of the Quran, but this was an event, there's no interpretation here. When we say that the Quran is a miracle, this is why we say the Quran is a miracle. Did the Holy Prophet not have other miracles? No. When you pick up tafasir, they say the Holy Prophet, when the Jews asked for miracles, such as the ones that Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam did, for example, the hand, the Holy Prophet showed it. When they asked for other miracles from the Holy Prophet showed them all the miracles that they wanted to see. Yet they still didn't believe. What did they say? He was a magician. He was a magician. Even until the Holy Prophet was passing away, there were Muslims who were saying that he's a magician. Muslims that were claiming that he's a magician. But when it comes to understand why the Holy Prophet's strongest argument or miracle was a book, like I said, it's important to understand the language of the Quran. In the time period of Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam, the historians, they say that the only thing that they didn't have a cure for at that time was death. That was it. In terms of medicine, they were advanced. The only thing, I don't know what kind of diseases that they had, but whatever diseases they had, leprosy, they didn't have a cure for. Death, they didn't have a cure for. Medicine. In the time period of Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam, magic. Magic was at its peak point. In the time of Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam, medicine was at its peak at that time. It was at its peak in that time period amongst all the nations. Medicine was at its peak. So when it came to the Holy Prophet's time, eloquence in speech was at its peak. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a prophet, He would send them with miracles according to that time period, according to that place. So He sent Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam with the ability to heal. Why? Because there was medicine there. He sent Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam with those types of miracles. Why? Because there were magicians there. Those magicians that would turn the ropes into snakes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam with a staff that would turn into a serpent. Those people at that time prided themselves over their magic. Those people at that time prided themselves over their knowledge of medicine. The same way the people in Arabia, in Hijaz, prided themselves over their eloquence. So to fight that pride, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needed to send what? What today is considered to be eloquence. What today is considered to be eloquent. So this is known as ijaz in Arabic, meaning the belief that no human speech can match the eloquence or the speech of the Quran. And this is one of those miracles, that this Quran cannot be reproduced by a human being. Two, three, what did we say are some of the other questions that are asked about the Quran itself? We talked about the content of the Quran. Non-Muslims, they ask us about the content of the Quran. They ask us why this Quran is a miracle. They ask us, why do we adhere to the laws, the rules, the regulations of the Quran 1400 years after it was revealed. You hear it, these laws are so old, backwards. They're backwards. Every society, it has to adhere to laws. There's some laws that don't change throughout society. There's some laws that are just universal. Meaning what? Punishment for death. Some of the crimes that you commit, the punishment is universal. Today, now, what's happening now? Before, even in this society, what was the punishment for killing someone? It was death. It was death. If you were found guilty of murder, you would be put to death. Within the last 50, 60, however many years, what's happened? Even if you're found guilty of murder, what happens to you? You go to jail. That's it. You go to jail for the rest of your life. And they say that this is humane. The murderer is living. The person he killed, this is justice. This is the justice? No. But what is happening now? There are some states that want the death penalty back. Yes, California doesn't have the death penalty anymore, but you have other states that have death penalties. And people are crying now. Why? Because of the injustices that are happening, the murders that are happening. You look at the Quran, what did they say? Oh, the Quran, it says, oh, if someone steals, you chop off their hand. That's backwards. They don't stop and think, or they don't stop, or they might know, but they don't tell you that there's 22 criteria before the hand gets chopped off. They won't tell you that. In Islam, yes, your hand will get chopped off, but once you meet 22 criteria, if you ask them what are those criteria, no, we didn't even know there were criteria. This is what Islam is not, the laws that we have, what do? Their laws are supposed to prevent you from committing wrongs. Meaning what? Meaning that the individual should be scared of the punishment for breaking that law. If you're not scared of the punishment, then you would break the law. What happens to us? Speed limit. What is the reason that we don't speed? Or we hope we don't get caught? Why? Because we don't want to pay the $500 fine. We don't want to go to jail for reckless driving. We're scared of that. If we don't have fear of the law, then we'd continue to break it. Some people, they break it. This is the same way, this is what it is in Islam. To put that fear so you don't hurt other people. But what did they say? No, this is backwards. No. What's backward is that the person that's committed the atrocity, the person that's committed the crime has not paid for the crime. The person that the zulm was done on, they're still crying for justice. That's what's wrong. You have some countries, Western countries, that for murder, do you know how long they put you in for? 10 years. 10 years for murder. And if you've been good in jail, you can get out in 3, you can get out in 4. This is justice? You look at some European countries. When no one's afraid of the law that you have, then why would they uphold it? That's absolutely true. In Islam, we have these laws, but we also have criteria. For example, with the hands. Like I said, 23 criteria need to be met before the hand can be chopped off. One, you look at whether the person that committed the crime, whether that person that stole is sane or insane. You look at whether that person is free or he was a slave. You look at whether how much or that thing that was it stolen from something that was hidden or was it stolen from an open place. You look at whether or not this person, he repented and he gave it back, or no, did he keep it. You look at whether this person was baligh or non-baligh, if he was an adult or not adult. 23 criteria before you can decide to even cut. And when you do chop off, they make it sound like you chop off the whole arm. No. In our fiqh, you chop off the fingers. You chop off the fingers. Why? Well, because you're praying. That's the answer that the Imam gave. That's absolutely true. That's the answer that the Imam gave because of prayer. What is it that the fingers do? If we were to apply just, that's the spiritual answer that the Imam gave, and that's absolutely true. In Islam, what needs to happen? Your palm, it needs to be on the ground. Palms, they need to be on the ground. Your palms, your knees, your feet, okay, they need to be touching the ground. Okay, your forehead, they need to be touching the ground. But think about it. What is it that the fingers do? Everything that we do, we grasp with our fingers. We grasp with our fingers. Whatever was stolen was grasped with our fingers. When we don't have those fingers, you can't grasp. But just the thought that, hey, you know what? If I do that and I get caught, my fingers will be chopped off and I won't be able to do anything. Just that thought is supposed to prevent you from stealing. Just that thought is supposed to prevent you from stealing. And you look at a lot of Islamic countries. I'm not saying there's no theft. No, there is theft. But not as much as there is. For example, look at America today. You look at America today. All the smash and grabs. Just last week, I think it was in Orange County somewhere. In New York, it was happening. Where groups of individuals, they were going into stores, especially jewelry stores, in these high-end brand stores. What were they doing? They were stealing everything. Why? Because they're not afraid of the law. If you were afraid of the law, then you wouldn't do it. If the law was applied to everyone, you'd be afraid to do it. This is why we're adhering to those rules that were set 1400 years ago. Why? Because they're still applicable today. They can still apply today. That fear is going to be with us until when? The day of judgment. That fear of committing a crime. That fear of being punished for something. And even some of the Westerners, they look at some of these laws, they say, we really wish we had some of these laws. We really wish we had some of these laws. But inshallah, next week, we'll go over some, because now the month of Shaban Rajab is coming, and the month of Shaban is coming. Inshallah, we'll look at the Quran itself until my father comes back. We'll look at the Quran, we'll look at tafsir of the Quran, and see how we can apply some of those verses to the society that we live in. Because it's one thing that we talk about the fazail of the Ahl al-Bayt from the Quran. Yes, we can talk about that. That's absolutely true. And we should. But the esoteric meaning of the Quran, when they apply to the Ahl al-Bayt, they apply to the Ahl al-Bayt. But does that mean that we don't look at the exoteric meaning of the Quran also? The esoteric meaning of the Quran will apply to the Ahl al-Bayt. But the outer meaning of the Quran will apply to us. The outer meaning of the Quran will apply to us. So, inshallah, what we'll do is we'll look at some of these verses of the Quran, and we'll see how these verses are applied to us, or how we should be applying them to ourselves in the society that we live in. Inshallah, that will be hopefully next week. But I want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins. I want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep the Imam of our time safe. Make his reappearance as soon as possible. Let us, our families, and anyone that wants to sacrifice their life for him and his cause be able to sacrifice their life for him and his cause. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for your marhumeen and for all the marhumeen whose names are on the board in the back. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. नाम क्या है? Syed. Please recite another Surah Fatiha for the uncle of Brother Fayaz, whose name is Syed Ghulam Hussain Shah, who had just passed away recently. Please recite Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There's a brother or a moment who's having heart surgery tomorrow. Please recite 5 times Ayat al-Karima for the surgery to be successful and for him to come out of the surgery completely with shifa. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Amma yujibul mudtarra iza da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. 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 Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. This mu'min that is having surgery tomorrow, please give him complete shifa. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad.
السلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين. السلام عليك يا خاتم النبيين. السلام عليك يا رحمة للعالمين. السلام عليك يا حبيبنا وحبيب الله رب العالمين ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث علي أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن سيدة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالم. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا سار الله وابن سار والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر. أطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الإسلام الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة. لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مظلمات ثيابها. أشهد أنك من دائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. أشهد أنك إمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي هادي المهدي. أشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والغربة الوسطى وحجة أهل الدنيا. أشهد أن لا ملائكة وأنبياء ورسل وأني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم مؤمن وإيا بكم موقن بشرع ديني وأخواتي وأمري قلبي لقلبكم سلما أمري لأمركم متبع صلوات الله عليكم على أرواحكم على أجسادكم على إسامكم على ظاهركم على باطنكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا مغيث الشهداء والزوار في يوم الجزاء، السلام عليك يا أنيس النفوس، السلام عليك أيها المدفون بأرض توس وأبنائك الأربعة وآبائك السبع ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان، يا كامل الكفر والطغيان، أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعل الله من أنصارك وأعوانك برحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
खाली एक चीज तो नहीं उठानी, ये